So, as many of you know by now, Chuck Yeager died on Monday, December 7th, 2020, at the age of 97. While I am glad that he was an accomplished man who lived a very long life, his loss is still sad, and this man deserves to be remembered. He served as a fighter pilot back in World War II, but he was most famously remembered as the first man to break the sound barrier in a straight and level flight. Nowadays, that is easily accomplished by modern fighter jets, but back then, breaking the sound barrier was dangerous. To fly something like the Bell X-1, a plane whose sole purpose was to put as much thrust into the plane as possible, would have been a terrifying prospect, and that is what I like about test pilots. They are brave enough to do this job. They are composed enough not to panic, and they are smart enough to know how to solve any issues that could come their way. It takes a lot of courage to be a test pilot. They are a different breed of pilot, but do not make the mistake of calling it reckless. Test pilots are anything but reckless. They study the aircraft intensively before they ever get off the ground, and they will always do basic maneuvers before they get into more dangerous tasks. As a test pilot, you have to respect your plane and what it can do. Chuck Yeager knew this about his job, and he excelled at it, eventually becoming the Director of Aerospace Safety in the United States Air Force. From there, he made a lot of quotable statements about air safety and aviation, his most famous quote being, "A good landing is one you can walk away from." Because at the end of the day, you may have lost a plane, you may even be in hot water with the FAA, but what matters is that you are alive and you can continue to live past the accident. As you can imagine, there are a lot of quotes from this man, and if you're in the aviation community, you probably know a few. But what sets him apart from a lot of aviators in my eyes is that he emphasized the need to feel the plane, to become one with the plane. This isn't necessarily advocating to trust your senses instead of your instruments, but what it means is that you have trained in an aircraft for so long that you know what the control surfaces will do, what they are capable of. For example, a rudder can make the plane bank, thrust can induce climb, cross-controlling can induce drag. You get the idea. That is invaluable in an emergency situation because sometimes the controls are not readily available. How you get the feel for the plane comes from practice. And a little side note, when I took martial arts in college, my instructor also knew psychology. And for anyone who is in psychology, feel free to correct me if this is wrong. But he explained that when starting out, your mind uses the conscious to try and solve facts. As things move forward, the frontal lobe takes a back seat, while the subconscious starts to act since it knows what to do thanks to the conscious. If you have a long commute, and God knows I did, but you don't remember how you got there, it's because your subconscious is doing the driving. This applies to other things such as martial arts, games, flying, playing an instrument. It's all achieved by getting a feel of what you are doing. Pilots sometimes have to think outside the box in order for them to make it on the ground and have that good landing. There are a lot of instances where the day was saved by pilots knowing what to do with their aircraft. A good example is Alfred C. Haynes, the pilot of Flight 232. This video could not do him justice, but I suggest you look it up. But basically, he had to control an aircraft with no hydraulics and only differential steering from the engines. Sadly, he too passed away, and I regret not making a video about him when he did. Still, as you can tell, I do want to make videos about the people in aviation history. And there are a lot of things that are never really talked about. There's no YouTuber I know of who covered Glenn Curtiss or Tex Johnston. If you want me to cover aviation history and make documentaries, let me know and I will happily cover them. But for now, I implore you to look more into Chuck Yeager. This guy was not only a badass, but he was also a philosopher. He did a lot of things that I haven't covered in this video, such as being a test pilot for MiGs, He also flew some of the newer aircraft, such as the Airbus A380, so I can't give anything less but my utmost respect for this man, Chuck Yeager. Thank you for making the skies safer. And for the rest of you, you have a good one.